Welcome to True and Unpolished, the podcast, a Cusp culture production. Through this podcast, our intention is to uplift, inspire, and amuse.
Let's get authentic. Hey there, everybody. It's Lydia and Mary, and we want to talk to you today about pausing. It's something that's come up within my awareness over this last week, the need for a pause. And there are times where it is truly helpful for us to set things down and to allow life and the universe to move, people and events without our conscious pushing or effort. And I actually did a talk on this week, and I recognize that there are just moments where we might need to pause a relationship, or we might need to pause a creative endeavor. We might need to pause all the healing work we're doing on ourselves. It's time to kind of set that down. And part of how this came about was Mary and I were talking last week, and she was kind of inviting us to have a hard conversation, a conversation about an issue that she and I really have kind of two perspectives on. You know, we differ in the way that we see it. And when she asked me, I could feel that it's purposeful that we do it. And I also could feel that I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready to do it. And so, and Mary, being the amazing woman that she is, allowed me to press pause and say, no, not yet. Right, Mare? You remember the conversation?
Yes. And Lydia sent me her talk yesterday because we were trying to decide what we were going to focus on today. And she wanted my thoughts about it. And what that listening to that did was it kind of made me ponder this idea of pausing. And this morning, Lydia, I got a card. I drew a card, an oracle card, because that's one of the things that we like to do to listen to our intuition.
Right.
But the card was about coyote and trusting in divine detours. So what I'm wondering is if anybody else feels like life is leading you on a strange detour right now, or does it seem that what appears to be the next right action and right choice turns into something else and just disappears as if into thin air, as if it was never there?
Tell me what you mean by that, because I hear you saying, you know, the divine detour. I get that, the concept of, we're going one direction and all of a sudden it's like, oh, nope, now pivot, go this way. But what do you mean disappears? Tell me about that.
Coyote spirit's trickster energy is designed to bring you into situations to teach you lessons you have forgotten to learn.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and so what I wanted to tell you about is the where my mind has gone with this pausing thing, because whenever a week before, I would say for me, the pandemic started, my awareness of the pandemic came a week after this time last year, after I resigned from my job.
That's right.
So to go off on my own and create a private practice, but and create online courses and that sort of thing. So what happened was I resigned from my job, and then I kind of realized, that like everything's sort of shutting down.
Right.
But I had already made up my mind, and it was, in some ways, it was perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have right now on my nightstand is about 6 books that I ordered all at one time, and I'm like devouring them.
Yeah.
But over the last year, what I've really done is not any of the business stuff that I like, any of my coaching or art therapy practices. Really, I've done a little bit, but what I've done over the past year is learned about business and marketing, because because life's kind of taken me on this coyote trickster
detour, right? Like you had
detour.
kind of okay. So the books, number one, are about business and marketing strategy and that sort of thing. And so what you're saying is, last year you said, okay, I'm going to do it this way. Like I'm going to go this way. I'm going to get this person's help. I'm going to do this thing. And what you're realizing now is that you were on a detour this past year.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So, well, I mean, I think after listening to your talk on pausing,
Mm-hmm.
and really the other thing I've thought about is just the idea of when we take a breath.
Yes, right.
That is pausing, and that moment between our in breath and our out breath.
Right.
So it's almost as if just collectively we've taken this deep breath in.
Yes.
And there has been this very long pause.
Yeah.
And each of us have experienced some form of that in varying ways. So I'm just telling you about my pause.
So I think that and part of why this came about is that I feel like we're in kind of a new pause. This feels like it's the pause right before we join the world again, so it's like, we have been, we've been in pandemic mode, and now it feels like we're at the pause right before we join the world again. That was kind of what came up within me. And that helped me to see that so collectively we've got a pause going on, but I also think that personally, each one of us is experiencing a pause in some form, and it may be related to the pandemic and it may not be related to the pandemic, but everybody that I talked to in this talk that we're talking about, it's Unity of Appleton. You can go to True and Unpolished Facebook page, and we're going to have a link there to the talk so that you can go and listen to it if you're inspired to. And what I recognize is that, we do these things, right? We have, a relationship, or we have a creative endeavor that we're doing, you and your business, like you've been striking out. And I think from watching you, to me, it feels like you're at a pause moment because you've done a whole lot of action. Like you've taken a whole lot of action getting this business going. And now I think the pause for you in some ways is about setting it down and going and having fun. Now you got to let life and the universe catch up with you, move the people into your experiences that are on the way, move events and circumstances. And the pause is not that things aren't happening. It's that we're not doing them. Like during the pause, the recognition is a whole lot of stuff is going on, right? If you're talking about a relationship, it could be that there is a shift within this other person that's coming, right? So you're not doing it, but lots of stuff is getting done in the pause. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're right, except that me personally, I think the fun piece is really important. And I did that this weekend. I hosted some friends for an art party, and that was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. I love doing that stuff, and I love kind of helping people shift.
Yes.
So
you're good at it.
But that was fun. But I also, in your talk, you said something about as soon as you think you're done, there's something new that's going to come. You're going to have, never going to have your last conversation with somebody until you have your last breath.
Right.
Or you're never gonna, if you finish a creative project, then a new one's gonna come. So in speaking of that, personally, I have this intense urgency. As I was saying, all of these books are sitting on my nightstand. Well, when I was kind of thinking about this topic last night, I remembered, and that I have several stories like this, but what I remembered was when I was a teenager and I had to sell something, donuts in this case, for my school.
Yeah. Like
team.
The gift wrap drive and whatever.
Right. Well, we had fresh, hot, now Krispy Kreme donuts. And somehow I get inspired, and somehow I managed to sell them. But then there was something that happened, and what I remember about these donuts is they never got delivered, but they sat on the fireplace. And I remember ants getting in the donuts.
So you sold all these donuts, you took the money, and then you didn't deliver the donuts?
Yeah.
For shame.
But I don't remember what happened after that.
Okay. So something happened for you to, okay.
But my point is, because of that, and I have a couple more stories like that, I've told myself that I'm not good at sales.
Right. So your story has been, I can't sell things for whatever reason. Like, even if in the case of the Krispy Kreme donuts, it wasn't even your fault. It's like the universe ain't gonna let you sell. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
So my kind of starting with the trickster coyote card, and then all this like urgency with learning this stuff, because what I decided a couple of weeks ago, even though I have paused for the past year,
right
now I have this urgency because I don't, I want and need to know. But what happened, I think, a couple of weeks ago is I decided that I was going to change that story.
Yeah, great.
So what has happened is that life has led me down a path. And so that's what I mean by the pause.
Oh, so part of this was about you changing that story, that long held story. So this past year has been,
right.
To kind of bring that about so you could look at it and release that story. And I just want to comment on the sense of urgency piece. And this may or may not have been what you were saying, but any voice in our mind that says, I got to make this happen, I got to do that, the voice that says, you can't pause, you got this to do, you can't pause, there's all this stuff going on. That voice is believing a faulty premise. And the faulty premise, and this is what you're pointing toward earlier, the faulty premise is that we're going to get it done, like that there's ever a get it done. Like, even when we say your healing journey, a journey implies that there's a destination, there's an end point, right? So when we think we can't pause it, it's because we think we got to get to this end point. And the realization and the recognition is, as soon as you get to the end point, the goalpost moves. There's another layer of healing to do.
Right.
There's another creative endeavor. There's hopefully, otherwise life will be very stagnant and stale. There's another hard conversation. Certainly, you're going to have more than one hard conversation. So if you've paused and not having the hard conversation, there's going to be another one after it. So remind yourself that this idea that there's a destination and end point is really, first of all, untrue and certainly unhelpful.
Yes, you've said that to me several times. Recently.
Well, are you listening?
Recently.
Are you taking notes?
I'm taking notes.
Oh, good.
Well, I think that's true, and that can be in, like you said, and having fun or taking a nap. That's that's one of my things. I love to take a nap or go to sleep, or I like to be lazy all day on one day on the weekend.
We call those PJ days at my house, pajama days.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a good name. I had a friend that called them pajama. You need to take a pajama day.
And see, what you're pointing toward is, what do you do in the pause? Well, here's what you do in the pause. You have fun in the pause. You rest in the pause. Those are the kinds of things, because, and it's easy to remember to do that when you recognize, what is the pause for? The pause is because there is integration happening. If it's in your healing journey, it's because there's old, new awarenesses are meeting and replacing those old awarenesses, right? So things are going on within your mind. You're paused. So that's a perfect time to rest. If it's a creative endeavor, then go have fun, because the creative endeavor that you're doing is likely to bring you joy. So
what you're talking about is the winner of the creative period, which is an incubation phase.
Right.
So in literally in their creative phases, just like there are seasons.
Yes.
And incubation is one of the phases, which we are in winter for a few more days at least.
Yeah.
And so kind of recognizing that is part of, living in alignment with the seasons of the weather outside.
Right. And there's great purpose in every season. There's great purpose in it. And the pause has a lot of purpose. And so you want to embrace and harness that purpose and that power that is inherent in pausing. And the way that you do that is you recognize, first of all, that stuff's going on. You're just not doing it. And then energetically, what do I need to do to get myself in the space of the energy that I'm trying to create? So if it's a hard conversation, obviously that's healing. That is a coming together. It is, the energy to that would be light, love, fulfillment. So what can you do to experience those things now? Right?
Well, gently avoiding the situation or gently approaching.
Yeah. Right.
Whenever it's time.
Yeah. And I love that coyote trickster. I want to also go back to the very beginning where we were talking about the oracle cards, because I don't know that we've necessarily talked to you peeps about that, but this is a fun thing that Mary and I embraced long ago, and we love it. And there are, different oracle card decks. And before I lose some of you, let me explain. What we recognize is that all guidance and wisdom is within us, and it comes from within us. And there are times where it is helpful for us to reach that wisdom through an external method, right? So when we have these card decks, and what I do is I'll, say an intention. I'm here to be truly helpful. My intention is to hear my own wisdom from my soul. And then, we draw a card and we see what the card has to tell us. That is what Mary was talking about before with the coyote. And I would really love it if you would read the coyote card, because I feel like there's purpose for me in the coyote card that might be separate from what we're talking about today.
And these come from one of my favorite authors of oracle cards. Her name's Colette Baron Reed, but
yes,
I'll kind of continue on with where I left off because I was reading the questions before.
Okay.
Perhaps you need a taste of failure before you experience success, a need to feel disappointment before you can truly appreciate the joy, love, and prosperity that is coming up for you. Perhaps you are revisiting a pattern you forgot wasn't in alignment with the life you're intending to co-create. Being reminded that gratitude, not complacency, will keep you awake and aware of all that is available to you in this moment. Coyote reminds you to laugh about the unexpected twists to develop humility and gratitude while releasing your attachment to the form of your desires.
They pause, release attachment to the form of those desires. I love it. And you know what this is bringing up for me is that this is one of the things that you've really inspired in me, because I heard you reading it and I thought, oh, I should do a mandala with a coyote. I should draw a coyote,
Yeah.
And that is so Mare. And this is one of those things that if you draw this card, you feel like it's speaking to you. You can feel that you're getting some intuitive guidance from within you. One way to really seep in that and to let that new awareness in is what Mary teaches, which is get out your journal, do a mandala, and just start creating and see what comes up for you in that time. Right, Mare? See, I've been a good student.
And you do not have to be an artist to do it.
Yes, because I'm not.
That is a common misconception about what I do. As a matter of fact, sometimes trained artists are the worst people to work with because
they're attached to
they already know.
Yeah.
And so, the fear of judgment in our culture around art is yes. pretty strong, but
one of the things you got me to do, which I found very helpful, is Mary knows me and she knows that I have this perfectionist thing and I want it to look pretty. And so she walked me through an exercise, but beforehand she had me order chalk pastels because she knew specifically that with chalk you can't be exact and precise. It's not perfect. There's going to be dust. Oh, I didn't tell you this.
Right. You can draw that coyote with some chalk.
Yeah. And can I tell you, I did this with my oldest son, because he
really?
is yes, I did it. And I told him it was Mare. It was you that did it, because he is like me. He's perfectionist. Like, we will do little drawing, exercises in our family. Like each one of us will draw the same picture. And my oldest son, like, we'll have a time limit, right? And the time limit will be 5 minutes, right? And so we'll all be drawing and the time will go off. We'll all have completed or almost completed, whatever it is, a picture of a bird, and my son will have just finished one wing of the bird because he's so like detailed. And so I said, I want to challenge you like Mary challenged me, use these chalk pastels. And so he starts doing it and he's like, no, and he got real dramatic about it, but he was laughing his head off because it kept getting dust everywhere. And he's like, no, this is terrible. Yes. So I know we just got off track, but that's just like the coyote. We took a detour.
Detours. So I just wanted to tell everybody that I hope you'll listen to Lydia's talk. It was very helpful. And she didn't say this, but PAUSE is an acronym.
Yeah, I created an acronym.
And she actually gives you instructions on what to do and how to do it, which is very helpful when all, like for me, all I have is this sense of urgency to get things done right now.
Mm-hmm.
It was helpful to just get some permission to let go a little bit.
Yeah. And the acronym is the how-to. So thank you very much. And I'll tell you that we will go to True and Unpolished Facebook page. We will have a link to my talk on the peaceful pause where I give you the acronym. And while you're over at our Facebook page, you can just click that like button. We wouldn't be mad at that.
We would not.
We would not be mad at that. Well, everybody, this has been fun. As always, you have been listening to True and Unpolished, the podcast. Let's see what happens next.